Future Commerce is brought to you by Vertex. Vertex Cloud is for businesses of all sizes, from small and medium-sized businesses all the way to enterprise. You can find out how Vertex can help your business by visiting them online at vertexcloud.com/futurecommerce. Future Commerce is brought to you by OmniSend. OmniSend is way more than just email marketing, more sales, and combine more channels with one platform. Learn more about OmniSend today at omnisend.com/futurecommerce. Pop quiz, are you torn between hiring an email marketer or a growth marketer at the start of 2021? Well, that is just so 2020 because with Marketer Hire, you can staff a team of expert marketers on an hourly, part-time, or full-time basis. So stop looking for that one do-it-all marketer and instead work with pre-vetted experts from Marketer Hire. Future Commerce listeners can receive a $500 credit when signing a contract before January 31st, 2021. Don't delay. Go right now to marketerhire.com/podcast to claim this offer.
Hello, and welcome to Future Commerce, the podcast about next generation commerce. I'm Brian.
Little pause there, Brian. I like it. I'm Philip. And today we have Sucharita Kodali, the Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester, coming back to the show for, I think, the fourth time, making her the most frequent guest we've ever had.
Has it
Welcome
been
back to the show. It's been 4.
It's always so fun to talk to you guys. So thanks for having me back.
Well,
I'm glad I
thank
haven't
you.
been kicked off. I haven't been blacklisted yet.
No, not yet. Not yet. I think that we're still in your good graces. You continue to come back on. We thank you for it. And who could forget your greatest hits? Zucchini in a cucumber pile. Can't forget that one. You've been quoted a few times this year. I'll just kind of like get right into it. We're going to talk about 2020 in retro. And I want to get your take from your vantage point in the ecosystem because you have such a unique perspective because you get to see the inside of so many businesses and you get to look at the whole ecosystem. But just kind of thinking back, there was something that happened this year that brought back a conversation that we had with you a couple years ago early on in the beginning of the podcast, which was you had said, like, in the future, brands should be thinking about how they can become marketplaces. And I think we see more of that today playing out than ever before. And if you had asked me a few years ago, I would have said that that's crazy. But hey, you said it and it's come to pass.
In 2017, I think, no less.
2017, you said it.
Well, thank you for remembering that. Yeah, no, well, it has been amazing. And it's been, I think, part of it is the success, I think, of course, of Amazon just showing the possibility. Mm-hmm. And then you also have service providers, I think, that, companies like Miracle and others that have facilitated it, really.
And it's so interesting, too, because if you think back to the old days, I'm an old guy in e-commerce now, but you think back to the language of e-commerce that was pioneered by not only the early .coms, but like Endeca. Back in the day, and they sort of created service and productized, the language of e-commerce, which is now very commonplace everywhere. Mm-hmm. Effectively, that's what the miracles of today are doing, I think, for brands that are not named Amazon. So it's really interesting to see that pick up in the space. But anyway, you are the soothsayer, the prognosticator. You're telling our future. What can we learn from 2020, Sucharita, that we could take away? What was the theme of this year besides pandemic land?
Right. Oh my goodness. I don't know that we will ever have in our lifetimes again a year like this year. But I think that if I had to summarize the broad theme, I would say it was divergence, and not like the novel, but just kind of just haves and have-nots. It was the difference, divergence in political thought. It was divergence in, essential versus non-essential. Divergence in, kind of people who received aid versus didn't receive aid, employed versus unemployed. Everything, every aspect of every part, I feel, of 2020, whether it was in business or whether it was in politics and attitudes or financial outcomes. You were you were either lucky or you weren't. And that's what I would say was was the big characteristic of this year.
I think that's really interesting. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. And I wonder, is that theme a theme that you think is going to stick with us, or are we gonna are we gonna keep that contained to 2020?
Gosh, yeah, I hope that it's contained to 2020, because I don't know how much longer we can have, just so much fractionalization. You can have so much just inequity that is prevalent. But I don't know how we get out of it, though. I mean, that's the challenge is, even if we were to well, and I guess that, kind of, so there are different levels here, right? There's what's happening in the world, issues like unemployment and growing inequality in society. I don't know if there's any easy solution, and I don't know if that is something that will change substantially in 2021. With respect to business, however, where you have some sectors that have been just doing phenomenally well, the best that they've ever done before, like, say, for instance, the essential retail sector. And you take other categories like hospitality. Is 2021 going to be any better for them? Probably a little bit, but not substantially better. Is that a permanent decline, or is it just kind of a complete recalibration that's going to probably change their business, but they'll recover eventually? And I think that it's probably more of the latter, that it'll just be a longer recovery, but there will be some form of a recovery. And that's a more fixable issue, I guess. So that's what I would say is that, 2021, I think that we're all optimistic. We're all hoping for the best. Some things will be better. But it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's going to take months to get the vaccines distributed. And then it will still take a while for people to feel comfortable resuming their old lives. And that may be until, next summer at the earliest, probably.
Yeah. Well, we're diving like full into COVID conversation here. So looking back,
how could you not, right?
Yeah, right. That's right. That's the world that 2020 was. So I would love to just, get your takeaways on how retailers and brands sort of respond to and how they fared during sort of the pandemic, like the initial response, where we settled in, like where you saw investments being made, lessons learned, things like that. So maybe we could start to chat and dive in on some of that.
So retail, I think had a huge, basically a huge kick in the pants, right? I mean, this was something that was just happened so quickly, and they'd never seen before and never anticipated that the entire country would shut down. And, there was literally nothing that, you were not going to get like any kind of a bailout package or anything to support you in the process. And I think that what that did is that forced a lot of companies to quickly change and pivot and do things that had taken them probably 10 years to even, think about. Because topics like curbside pickup or, inventory visibility across channels. I mean, how many companies would talk about that, but then they would hem and haw over actually getting it done. And, lo and behold, when they were forced to do it, they were able to do it in like a few weeks. So I think that it showed the possibility of how fast things can move when you set your mind to it and everyone's aligned. Is that now that change is, if they were able to bottle that energy and, kind of be able to unleash it in the right strategic moments, I think that would be fantastic for retail. But what I worry about is that that's not the lesson they take away. That it's sort of like, okay, we dodged a bullet, we're still alive, it's back to business as usual, and it's back to, slow decision making and departments of no. And I don't know that that's right. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
and I
it's
don't
true.
know.
Yeah.
And that's what I worry about, because that's what's inhibited a lot of, just innovation in retail in general. It has been, kind of reticence to change and hesitation to explore, kind of new possibilities.
So the lesson's going to be, we can make it through a pandemic, not, oh, wow, look what we can do when we're agile. Like agility is the future of our business. And that's how we should go about doing things.
It's so interesting how we can, for all of the talk that businesses have around consumer behavior being forever shifted, no one is talking about enterprise behavior being permanently altered. And I'm curious.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have this idea that like there's this nascent, that like we'll all kind of regress back to the mean of things taking forever. Ted Shadler, one of your colleagues, had a report earlier this year called "The Pandemic Recession Demands a Digital Response." There was a lot in there that I think talked a lot about like the CIO role becoming much more prominent and the acceleration. This recurrent theme that we've heard Scott Galloway and others talk about COVID being an accelerant. The CIO and CDO role in an organization was prioritized above all this year because that's where the innovation was required. Is that something? I mean, not to get you to comment on another colleague's piece, but is that something that we can see as like, it takes 30 days to form a habit. We've all been in that state of mind, and the enterprise side for 10 plus months. Is that something that's here to stay, or is the world of enterprise or e-commerce and marketplace kind of just going to regress back to their old ways?
I hope that it is a change, and that's a really astute point. Is that they could see this as kind of this is the fastest we've moved before. We're doing things radically differently, and it's working for us, or not maybe in some cases, but in many cases, I think it is. Is this something we move forward with? I mean, I think we've had this discussion a little bit around things like work from home, because that's the most visible switch, and kind of there's a thesis that, oh my gosh, this is going to completely transform corporate real estate because everybody's going to work from home because people are finding they can be just as productive at home. And there's a part of me that's like, I think that probably about 20% of it will switch, but the other 80% is going to go back to the old way. And I think that applies to consumers in some ways too. I think that yes, there will be about, some portion of it, maybe a fifth that the change to digital or the change to contactless payments or, your online grocery orders or whatever that you switched during the pandemic, that will be what continues, but the vast majority, I think, will go back to what was before. And the reason is it's just, I think that people, I think that business is forever this tension between, kind of doing things more efficiently versus doing things the way you've always done them. And, people are used to, if it's what works, it's what it helps you grow a few percentage points a year, which is all that you need to do. It's a lot easier to just stick with that than to do something massively disruptive. I don't think that every business person aims for massive disruption. And I don't know that every business person should. Like the best thing I read through the whole pandemic was there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about this like little Japanese restaurant that was literally over 1,000 years old. 1,000 years old. It was like one of a handful of businesses in the world that's like 1,000 years old. And the whole theme was they are not radical. They don't do crazy things. They never get in debt. They've never been in debt. It's always been about being, just keeping the business alive for the next generation. And, and I think that is something that often gets lost is this belief that, kind of you need to be bigger, faster, stronger, kind of more disruptive than everybody else when, there's evidence right here that sometimes, that's like the business version of the tortoise and the hare, right?
Right. That's good. That's good.
It's very good. Which ones do you think stood out this year? Are there businesses that will prove more durable, and it's sort of this is a double barrel question for you, but are those businesses the ones that sort of made these investments that allow, that were well positioned or had the foresight to make these investments early on, things specific to like curbside or contactless or, last mile?
Yeah. And okay, so I'm going to completely pivot because I don't know that,
Please,
there'll be any tortoises that, kind of made it, kind of really, really well through the pandemic. I do think that companies did have to, manage to evolve in at least a few ways. In terms of, kind of survival through the pandemic, I think that the companies that were able to conserve cash and do what they needed to do to try to turn inventory. And that is where, if you shut down your store, you reduced your head count, and you did introduce things like curbside pickup, or you partnered with delivery partners because you had to. I think that those were, and so long as you were still able to at least break even, if not make a little bit of profit, those are the businesses that will likely at least be around. And then many of those companies, fortunately, interest rates are low, so they drew down cash and they were at least able to pay their rents. So, kind of most of their biggest expenses, it didn't leave them, it didn't, wasn't completely catastrophic. Now they do have to figure out, kind of how to pay off, their loans, and that will, I think, be something that cuts into innovation in the future. And there isn't really a great solution to that. We may ultimately end up seeing some consolidation in retail that comes out of this. Because that is seemingly just a natural outcome after distress. But yeah, I mean, I think that if I were to say like who's going to make it at the end of this, I mean, there were 4 sectors that really did exceptionally well through the pandemic, and it was not at all due to their skill. It was just purely due to their, good fortune. And that was the pure play e-commerce world. And they, were all abominable from, a shipping standpoint at, kind of what was available, et cetera. But that didn't hurt them because, that was sort of the only game in town for a lot of people. It was the do-it-yourself home improvement retailers. It was the mass merchants and the grocery stores. And those guys, grocery stores especially, just even like 24 months ago, we were having conversations, what's going to happen to grocery? Is it all just going to die? Yeah. And, it's like they were just basically, kind of given like a new heart. And, it's amazing how much this terrible incident has been perhaps the luckiest thing that happened to the entire grocery industry and every supplier downstream from the grocery industry. But yeah, so those are all businesses that will do well. The biggest questions that I have is what happens to malls now, department stores and apparel stores, and what happens to the restaurant industry. And the restaurant industry is a fascinating one because, again, also 24 months ago, we were like, that is the savior of physical retail. And then, who would have anticipated that, kind of you would have, kind of the craziest thing in the world happen where, everything just shuts down and you have this artificial suppression of demand.
Future Commerce is brought to you by Vertex. Vertex Cloud is the automation platform for tax calculation and use tax and everything in between for businesses of all sizes. From SMB all the way to enterprise, businesses all over the world trust Vertex for their tax calculation needs, and you should too. Check them out today at vertexcloud.com/futurecommerce. OmniSend is one platform to control all of your marketing channels. From marketing automation, SMS, and email to forms and segmentation, you can bring together different channels under one platform with OmniSend. OmniSend's powerful platform allows you to link together every customer touchpoint with one dashboard. And did I mention they have the most transparent pricing in the entire MarTech industry? Find out why brands like Fred Siegel and Unilever trust OmniSend with their customer relationships. Find out more about OmniSend today at omnisend.com/futurecommerce. Future Commerce is brought to you by Marketer Hire. In a recent Harvard Business Review report, as many as 83% of business leaders reported automation and digitization put strong or extremely strong pressure on their organizations to find skilled talent. And more than 60% said that they'd prefer to rent or borrow or share talent with other companies. This is the marketing gig economy, and Marketer Hire has built a network of top talent to help companies, including Netflix, Allbirds, Lambda School, and hundreds more. You can hire hourly, part-time, or full-time with no cancellation fees and no long-term contracts. This is about getting the right amount of marketing expertise right when you need it. Marketer Hire hand matches companies to expert marketers in as little as 48 hours. And you, as a Future Commerce listener, can get $500 credit when you sign a contract with Marketer Hire before January 31st, 2021. Go claim the credit right now. $500 credit before January 31st. Go to marketerhire.com/podcast. That's marketerhire.com/podcast and tell them that Future Commerce sent you.
Do you think that there's pent-up demand for some of these categories that struggled, like travel, like entertainment, like restaurants?
Well, yeah, it was yes. I mean, as some say that, kind of that the roaring 20s seemed like, a natural, kind of outcome after, the 1918 pandemic. So, I think that when we look even at regions like China and how they recovered or how they have been recovering, there's that concept of revenge shopping where, you have these companies, that just do the best they've ever done because people are finally out of their homes. And we saw a little bit of that even in June, right? Because we saw some of the lockdowns lifted, and you had these, like Porsche had its highest month ever. So there is no doubt that that these are there's nothing fundamental about the pandemic that is going to I think cause people's interest in luxury goods, for instance, to decline. I think that they just, consumers just had less options, right, to purchase those products. And yes, you're absolutely right. Like, kind of it's, some of that. Now, is it going to make up everything that was lost? Possibly not. But I do think that you'll have some, kind of resurgence that will definitely, kind of surface in sales. Travel, I think that it's the only thing that would hold that back is if there still are people who are just psychologically not prepared because but I imagine that over time that normalizes. There may be some percent of people who've been traumatized by the last several months and probably have no interest in traveling in the future, but I imagine that either they recover or it gradually gets back to where it
was. Do you feel like the sort of lack of travel has actually been a bit of a boom for the U.S. economy? So the places we could spend money, we were spending it, and we were spending it domestically because
we're spending it at home. Yeah,
exactly.
Or you weren't even spending it in your towns, right? You weren't spending it necessarily in Vegas or or in Florida or wherever or where you go to conferences or wherever that may be. That's an interesting question. We did see there was an analysis. I think the New York Times just did one on sales tax and just kind of income taxes, and looked at, kind of where there were recoveries and, kind of how were the financial, collections in different states. How did they vary? And states like Minnesota, I think, have surpluses now,
right.
And it's happened at the expense, states like Florida and Nevada, which have no income. I don't think they have income tax. Florida doesn't.
Nope,
I think that. And Nevada, I don't know if Nevada has income tax, but they're hugely dependent, of course, on the tourism industry. And those two states have, continue to have some of the biggest shortfalls. So yeah, I think that your thesis is a, kind of makes a ton of sense. That it's been almost kind of like there's been definitely high savings rates, right, especially amongst more affluent households, and some of that gets. And it's not all savings, some of that money, is just not going to other places. It's staying locally.
Well, don't forget the Robin Hood bros. There's it's buoyed by the YOLO walk Wall Street bets crowd.
Oh my gosh.
They're praying for that $600 stimulus.
Drunk investing.
It's true. It's true. Was that
the DoorDash success story? Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, well, the DoorDash was revised down to $40 target. So we'll see where that one goes. But there's always Airbnb, I guess. There's an interesting article that was written early in the pandemic that really shaped my thinking around like the effects of, or the cyclical nature of the way that the world sort of shapes to our these kinds of moments and environments. It was in Slate. It was called The Post-Pandemic Style. It really shaped a piece that I wrote called The New Formal, which was this idea that, hey, it's unsafe to go to the bar. You're going to bring the bar to the house, and people, will return to their formal living room and dining room and have much smaller pods of people, in this sort of like pendulum swing away from an infinite social circle to a very intimate social circle. People that we trust, people we allow in our homes. And, that will shape an entire generation of people in the way that they socialize. And I think we were kind of on that track anyway. So kind of laying the ground there. It's interesting what you said about what happens to malls, Sucharita, and this idea that malls were a kind of bastardized commons, where they're not really public space, right? They're commercial space, but they were treated as public space for the better part of 2 to 3 decades. And when they become the commons, like and we tie, consumerist tendencies or a consumer driven mindset to be in the commons, like this is the result of what we get. So when a mindfulness moment happens and shifts back into the culture, we've lost the commons. Now the commons is digital, right? We're moving the commons online. The commons is Twitter, which you could argue is maybe good or bad for society. At whole, like this could move the commons back to public parks, back to places where people feel safe to be. I feel like there's like a real opportunity here. That is probably not great for retail as we know it, but maybe better for the overall health and the ongoing existence of humanity. Maybe the 1,000-year Japanese, restaurant can exist and change with the times. But the way that we've sort of co-opted the commons for a consumer mentality, it was probably net bad for us anyway. And this is the world's way of correcting it. I wonder what your reaction is to some of that. Because I think you think very deeply about these kinds of things, and maybe I'm being a little too philosophical. I don't know.
No, there's a lot to think about there, and I think I agree with you. I think that I agree. I don't know that kind of a lot of retail in the last several decades has been all that great. Much of it has been fueled by cheap overseas manufacturing, which has relied on the abuse of everything from people to natural resources. So I think that what I would also say as an adjunct to, I guess it's always been there, right? That kind of my parents, my in-laws, like, they would always go walking in the mall, I mean, like, what is that? But, kind of the mall as a common space. And you just kind of, the light bulb just went off for me when you said that. But I agree that I think that, we are going to head back, or we will embrace true common spaces. But it also raises, it brings forward all this conversation that we're having now about ESG factors, right? Environmental, social, and governance factors. And I have heard, and I feel like it's everywhere now. And yeah, people will be like, oh, we've been talking about this for, decades. And why is it any different now? And I will say that it's different now because more people care. I think it's different now because people will actually, I think that there are now enough investors that if they are given enough of a case about the ESG values of a company, they'll actually choose to invest there, even if the return is potentially lower. And that I think is the big, and if enough people choose to go in that direction, the stock actually goes up, not down, right? So,
such a good point, because I'm sorry to cut you off. This is such a good point because we were already on that path,
right,
pre-pandemic. And you look at the Business Roundtable and the redefinition of stakeholder, and you look at and you look at the corporate response in light of the lack of government response early in the pandemic. Companies like Starbucks implementing social distancing before any states or federal government had any action. I think that you're onto something there. That corporations can be ambassadors, and capital markets will fund them if they're doing the right thing that resonates with what the general populace believes is, good, quote unquote, good for society. It's whether our definition of good for society is durable is my question.
And I think back to your thought processes around common spaces and where money is going now, local towns, places where you live, not the places where you worked, not the places that you flew to, but to where you live. I think if you think about, what that looks like, in fact, in my town, we have had more streets shut down and more like town events than ever I have ever seen out of any town.
In a good way.
Ever.
Right?
In a good way. Yeah. Right. Shut down for common spaces where people can go and eat outdoors and shop outdoors and be together in a socially distanced manner outside. Like,
so interesting. Where is this? This is in Florida, right?
No, I'm actually in a suburb outside of Seattle.
Oh, you're outside. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in Palm Beach, and this is where we're moving. Apparently, Silicon Valley is coming to South Florida, so
I heard that.
So that's what I keep hearing. Zillow seems to think it has an effect on my on my Zestimate.
Zillow thinks everything has an effect on your Zestimate. I think, but ultimately, I think what's interesting about all of this, though, is when we talk about the environmental, governmental, and social values that are changing, I think we're going to see investments that ultimately result in investment in specific physical communities.
Axios thinks so. Axios is launching ultra specific media for second and third tier markets.
I think that's super smart. I think that's exactly where we're headed right now. And I think
who's going to say hyperlocal first? Who's going to do it? Is it Sucharita? Are you going to say hyperlocal?
I think you said it first, Philip.
Getting back on track. We forgot Sucharita's here. I'm sorry. We do that sometimes. Hot takes as we kind of come up on time. What do you think next year looks like? You said, mid-year where maybe things are kind of, breaking off rust and creaking back to motion. Anything else that's sort of top of mind for 2021 in the retail sector?
It's a big question. I mean, is there going to be any major recovery, any major differences? And I think that we will likely, we've got to remember, we're still in the middle of a second wave. Most of the ICUs, it seems, are at capacity. I mean, it's going to be a while that we are going to continue I think in the direction that we are right now, to completely turn the direction of the tanker, it's going to take some time. So one of the things that we started to see in 2020 that we will likely see in 2021 is just the growth in category in kind of sectors like consumer packaged goods. And we started to see more of them doing things like selling direct to consumer. And I think that a lot of them are still very skeptical about the opportunities. And the ones that have embraced it the most have been in categories like maybe beverages or coffee or, some of these replenishment purchases like snacks. But I could imagine over time that we start to see more creativity, even kind of with other sectors in perishables or non-perishables, and whether it's leveraging business development partnerships or thinking more creatively about how they ultimately fulfill things. Now is really the time that these companies have the opportunity to experiment, and there's an appetite to trying new and different things. So that I think will definitely be something that we'll see more of in 2021. We started to see a ton of retailers in this past year invest in media networks and start to invest in advertising.
Yes.
And that is something that we've been talking about for a while, because retailers had really only historically ever made money by selling products on their own site and or on their venues. And what is different about this is that they're monetizing their eyeballs, their foot traffic, just kind of they're looking at themselves as media properties, and that makes a ton of sense because when you look at their raw numbers, they're as big as any media property. So to think about themselves as an alternative media channel becomes really, really attractive. And that's why, you started to see news about everybody from Walgreens to CVS to, Target and Walmart over, the last several months, really rolling out and continuing to build on those initiatives. My question will be, will advertisers respond to this, and what's the right model to make everybody feel good about this? And that's where I'm hearing that there's still a little bit of hesitation, but I think the idea is a good one. It's we keep hearing about the shakeout in physical stores and redevelopment of physical landscapes and physical properties, and I think that it's not something that we necessarily will see in 2021 because things like that, I think, take time, but we'll see the beginning of it in 2021. And this is, we've heard all the stats about the U.S. being more overstored than every other country in the world. But, I don't think we're as overstored as we think we are. I mean, we also buy more crap than everybody else in the world. So that's part of the reason for that. But, but there will probably be a 10 to 15% shakeout. And, a lot of it it's going to happen slowly because it's not going to be like, all of those places are all concentrated in the same, kind of shopping centers. It's dispersed. So, companies need to think about how do you take advantage of, kind of how can you be more nimble with open space? Do you sublease it to potentially to tenants that you wouldn't have considered in the past. So those, I think that we'll start to see, a lot of interesting creativity in the physical space that was previously occupied by retail.
Totally agree. 100% in agreement. I think we're going to get super creative with retail space and outdoor spaces as well. A lot of open air stuff I think will happen this coming year.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And if not, everyone's wearing a yurt.
Wearing a yurt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yurts are micro. We've got nano yurts now. Personal yurts. This is Brian took a picture at a Chick-fil-A drive-through of the Chick-fil-A people all wearing yurts. Like this is a big like
little
plastic
tents, person tents.
Like a little personal tent.
Yeah.
What a way to end the show. My gosh. Always brilliant to have you on the show, Sucharita. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Got to come back again soon.
I know.
Anytime. You ever need like a guest host? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Hey, that's you heard it here. Our newest property. It's a Future Commerce ex-forester. This has been great. Sucharita Kodali, thank you so much. Where can people find you? Can they follow you on Twitter or somewhere where they can get more of your musings?
Oh, sure. It's I do Twitter, LinkedIn. So Twitter is actually my maiden name. So that's Mulpuru. So it's S Mulpuru, MULPURU, and or you can follow or link in with me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much.